Hello, and welcome back to episode 10 of the Wisdom in Christ podcast. Today, I'm here with my dad, and we're going to talk about a few things. I've got a few ideas of things we're going to talk about today. So let's get started here. Should be a lot of fun. So, Dad, first thing I want to ask you is when you met Mom, you guys got married, and then you lived in like a couple trailer houses, or maybe just one trailer house that was connected to the shed over here.
Yeah, it was a few years after we were married.
A few years after you're married. So what led to you deciding to build a house? Like make that commitment and build this house? Because the house that we're making this podcast in, you built with your own two hands with the help of family and stuff. So what kind of led to that choice that you made?
Early on, after we had met in our marriage, we had talked about plans and things that we wanted to do. And one of the things that we had kind of talked about and almost maybe joked about a little bit is we'd build a log house someday. And so once I got the job that I was kind of looking for, then we started making plans, and we just kind of had always talked about that's what we were going to do. And so we started working towards that. We were living in a trailer at the time, and so we sat down one evening at the kitchen table with some graph paper, 8.5 by 11 graph paper. I think we used 2 sheets, and we drew our own house plans. My mom was there and Lindy was there, and we just sat there and drew these plans for the house that we're in right now. And that's kind of how it had started. We had just planned it from ever since we decided to get married. We were going to build a house someday, and it was the right time to get started on it.
So then what did it look like getting started? Like how you drew the paper, so you had a basic plan on your sheet paper, your graph paper. So what did it look like to get started? Did you have to talk with your mom right away about property? Did you have ideas about where to build?
Yeah.
What was kind of...
Yeah. So we talked to my parents, and they agreed that we could build down here. This property's been in the family for now probably 50 or 60 years. And so we figured the property situation out. And then, I don't know where the building plans, where our house plans came in the whole thing, but somewhere right in there, we decided to proceed with that. And so I went to the county and secured a building permit, talked with the building inspector, and he looked at our plans, and he just wanted we'd never drawn house plans before, so we had a couple little things that he wanted some more detail on, and so with that we made some adjustments in our plans, and I think our building permit was seems like it was about $270 or something. And so when we kind of had
It'd only be that cheap these days, huh?
I have no idea what it would
probably
be.
be like 10 times, who knows?
Yeah,
it
could be. Yeah, it could be a fair amount more. And the other thing we had to figure out is how we were going to pay for it. And throughout our whole marriage, Mom and I have always talked with each other, and we would discuss and go back and forth until we really came to an agreement on how we wanted to proceed. And so as we talked about that, we decided, well, we probably going to have a little bit of money to do it. I was only making like $8 an hour. And so we went to the bank at first, and we thought, well, it'd be easy to go in and get a loan and build a house. And we went into the bank and talked with them about borrowing some money to build this house. And the bank gave us a big stack of papers to fill out, and we brought them home and we looked at that, and it just kind of overwhelmed us. And so we were a little bit discouraged at that time, trying to figure out how we were going to do it. And I was talking with a good friend and told him what our dilemma was, and he says, well, I'll loan you the money. And I didn't know if I wanted to do that at first. It's been a good friend for a lot of years, and I didn't want to.
Yeah, it changes the dynamics of things, and if you don't pay it back or whatever, then it can affect a relationship to have that. If you're going to borrow a bunch of money from somebody, depending on how much it is, it's going to mean that relationship with that person, if you don't follow through, could be effective. So there's risk in that, and then also just it's a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely. And I think no matter, even in the best of situations, it changes something just a little bit when you owe somebody money. And this individual was amazing to deal with. I said, well, he says, how much do you need? And I told him a figure, and we had underestimated the amount we would need, but this person said okay, and right then he pulled out his checkbook and wrote me a check for that amount and handed it to me. And I said, do you want to drop a contract or write something down? And he said, I don't unless you do. And so from that point we just started building. Started on our plans. We had, I built a trailer, and from scraps and old axles and frame, I welded a trailer, a log hauling trailer. We secured a permit and started going to the mountain and cutting trees. We drug them out by hand with chains, with little handles on them. We'd fall the trees and hook them onto the logs, drag them out, load them on top of the trailer, and then haul the logs down to the valley.
It's a lot of logs.
Yeah, I figured that we needed at least 3,000 running feet of logs. So if we could have cut one tree that was 3,000 feet tall, it would have
did the whole house.
Would have done the whole house, but we couldn't.
That's a pretty tall tree, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't possible. And so we hauled them down in sections, which they were still really heavy because we didn't have loaders or anything to pick them up. We had to, drag them out of the forest to the trailer by hand, and then pick them up on the trailer by hand, and then bring them back and unload them by hand. And the whole process was...
Shave them too?
Some of the ones we did. No, all the walls. Then I worked to deal with a friend of mine who had a special machine that you could put the log in it, and it would trim it so that they were all the same size. And so I worked a deal with him.
It's easier to layer logs on top of each other that way?
When you're building a house like we built it, is. Yeah, it shaved the logs, and it basically made them all 8 inches around, because some of them were 12 inches and some of them were 8.5 or however many inches, and we wanted them all 8 inches.
So I noticed on a lot of log houses, there's multiple logs, but then they have like a middle piece of wood that's put in. Maybe it was only the cabin that used to be like this, because where the log is rounded and it goes into itself on both logs, kind
Right.
of going like that. A lot of times you'll see like a board put across that.
Especially old time
Is
construction.
that the difference if one of those houses has big gaps in the logs? It can help cover the cracks when they do that? Is that to help cover
Yeah.
cracks in the walls and stuff? Or
Yeah, there's just so many ways to build log buildings, and that system was used especially many years ago because they didn't have machines that shaped the logs all to 8 inches, and so it was a way that they could stack logs. It's called chinking, and then they would stuff. Sometimes they put mud in there, sometimes they put cement in there, sometimes they put some sort of insulation. People have used moss, probably all kinds of things that they would stuff in those cracks, and then nail a board over that crack where the two logs join like that, because there could be a space, in there, and you want to try to seal that up. We didn't have to do this on ours. We put some foam insulation between the logs, and then I used a material. It was a latex-based caulking for the chinking on these logs, and that seals up those cracks so you don't get cold air coming through.
so the benefits of building it these days versus pioneer days where there's a lot more work to seal off to keep the house warm and keep it from the weathering and stuff. And
Yeah,
today's is a little simpler. of
a
process.
little bit. It was still a big,
hard.
It was still a big job.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I
A
probably
lot of caulking.
I probably used, I don't remember, 10 or 15 gallons of caulking to seal up all the spaces.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, took quite a while.
But that probably wasn't the biggest cut in your budget and stuff. So after it was built, what did it feel like? I mean, that's quite the accomplishment to build an entire house. Plumbing, water. Did you have water and everything right at the start? I was a baby when all this was happening.
Yeah.
So I don't remember. I just remember building the garage with you when I was really little.
We started building the house before you were born. I think that as we were getting ready to move in, Mom was actually working. I remember her up working in this very room that we're in, and she was like 8.5 months pregnant with you, and she was sanding the logs and sanding the floor and trying to get it ready so that we could move in.
That's so funny.
To the house, and she's up here crawling around on her hands and knees, and she's 8 months pregnant, and so far as the accomplishment part, I don't know. I don't know quite how to answer that. It was an accomplishment, but it's just what had to be done for a place for us to live, because we didn't really want a conventional loan. And although we paid back all of the money that we borrowed from this friend with some interest, we didn't have a loan that, if you get a loan through a bank to build a house, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but what they will do is they dictate how soon you have to have it done. You have to have this done within a year or a year and a half. I don't know what the time frame is, but all of the loans I know of, they tell you how soon you have to have the house done. You can't take, 5 years or 3 years to build it. You have to have it done soon.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that one of the main reasons is they want people to get the house completed and moved into it, so there's less chance of people defaulting on the loan.
Oh,
If they start building the house and never finish it, then they're probably not going to be as likely to
pay back and stuff?
pay the money back, because there's not something they can live in. And so I don't understand fully why they do that, but that would be my guess. But we didn't have that, and the accomplishment was, I don't know, I've never really thought about it a lot. It was something that we needed a place to raise our family, and a place that was warm and dry and and that's what it's been. I kind of take that for granted a little bit when people ask me about it, that you built your house, and yeah, we did. We only paid. I think we hired someone to do a little bit of the plumbing, and the floor coverings, the carpet and linoleum when we first moved in. Other than that, we did everything: the electrical, the roof, the foundation, the footers. We did it all. The cabinets,
insulation in the roof.
Insulation, the sheetrock. We did everything with the help of my mom and dad, and my grandparents were still alive, and my Grandpa Johnson would come and help sometimes, and Grandma would come too, and she even helped. I remember her sitting in a chair, and we started out buying foam to put in between the logs, and that was expensive. And because we had a pretty tight budget, for two reasons: we didn't want to borrow a lot of money, because then it takes you longer to pay it off, and we just wanted to be careful. But I remember watching my grandma. She was probably in her late 70s, sitting in a chair with a pair of scissors, cutting used carpet pad that somebody had given us, and that was the foam insulation we put in between the logs. Remember watching her sit and cut that sitting there in a chair, and because she wanted to do something to help, and she could see that we were putting forth, a lot of effort, and it's just how our family was raised, was to try to help each other. And
this was great Grandma Anderson? I didn't hear you.
This would have been great Grandma Johnson.
Oh, Grandpa Johnson, Benjamin Johnson's wife?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Katie.
All right. I don't know that I ever met her.
I think
maybe I was so young.
Yeah, or she passed away shortly.
Yeah. Yeah.
She died before Grandpa Johnson did, and so.
But everybody was pitching in.
Everyone that could, and mainly it was on evenings and Saturdays and holidays that we worked on it. We didn't work on it on Sunday. I remember coming out, and we have some pictures of coming out here and setting it as we're getting close to move in, and I think we're in our church clothes, but we didn't work on it on Sunday. It was a day we took off from working on it.
So you're living in the trailer house connected to an old shed, so you had a little bit more room?
Connected to another log building that we built. We built that building that's there now, that's part of my shop.
Before the home.
Before the home. So we
added it onto the trailer,
so
right, when you built it?
Yeah. So
we built it with the trailer.
Brought the trailer in.
Okay.
And then built the log building next to the trailer, and then connected them with a little hallway.
Okay.
So,
and then you were able to just disconnect, and then you have that building. And you've still used that building to this day, every day.
Yeah,
almost.
I use it every day. Yeah. And then we sold that trailer. Somebody came in and bought the trailer. Just how we got the trailer was a blessing, a miracle in our family. Some people might not consider a trailer house a miracle, but it was for us, and how that all came about.
Well, when you're able to have a place to sleep with your family, and that, even if it's not extravagant and you're a young family, it probably feels pretty nice to have a place to go, even if it's just a trailer where you can say it's yours,
Yeah, it saved us a whole bunch to be able to do what we did with that little trailer.
So first of all, that's super, super cool to hear this story again. You've told me before, but it's just one of those things that it's just a neat story, and something that I've always looked up to you for building the home. And it's always left a strong impression on my mind that you really did it. Like you really built it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a rare thing. So it's a cool story. But I wanted to ask you, would you mind sharing maybe what your favorite mission story is, or one of your favorite mission stories from your mission? Because we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As you guys know on this podcast, I've talked about it a little bit before. So a 2-year mission is kind of standard for most young men that grow up in the church. They go on a 2-year mission. So to serve the Lord, to share the gospel. So what's one of your favorite mission stories?
Oh boy, there's a lot of them.
I wondered if that would be the case.
Yeah. So I'm going to back up and give just a little bit of a history on that.
Okay.
Growing up in the church, we're encouraged to serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. At that time, the young men could go out when they were 19 years old. We were encouraged to save our own money and pay for that ourselves, because you have to have an apartment, you have to buy food and gas, and you have to live. And it wasn't a terrible amount of money. I mean, I guess at the time, this was I left on January 4th of 1984. So
hyperinflation hadn't fully taken effect.
So I think we had to have about $400 a month, if I remember right, somewhere in there, to pay our rent and buy our food and buy gas if we were in the area, in a place where we had a car. And so I had saved some money, and my family helped with that also. Helped me, because I didn't have, I think back then you had to have $10,000 or something to cover that 2 years, because you don't work a regular job while you're out on your mission. Your job is going door to door and preaching the gospel, trying to share why you believe what you believe. And so that was an experience just in itself, getting ready, and you have to get all your medical stuff checked out, your teeth and physicals, and so that to make sure you're get anything taken care of. That way you don't have problems while you're out there. Sometimes you still do, but it was an amazing experience that changed my life for the better. That one of my favorite experiences, things that happened, was shortly after I had entered. Some of the terminology we use might not be familiar if you're not, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and familiar with missions and the things they do. So some of this terminology, but I'd been out serving for several months, and when you're there, you're always with another young man. If you're a young man, your companion, or the person you're with all the time, is another young man. And if you're a young lady, you're with a young lady. They don't mix those companionships, because you live a high law of morality, and while you're on your mission, you're supposed to,
and hopefully after too,
yeah.
Wait till marriage before.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we don't date. We don't do those things go on a date even on your mission.
Right. It's there. Even more so than when you're off your mission. You're encouraged to start dating and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you're on your mission out serving, you don't date, you don't go to dances, you don't, on rare occasions you could maybe go to a movie or something, but that would just be on a certain day. And so you live a pretty strict set of rules. And I had been out serving for probably 2 months, and my trainer, the person that you first go out there, you don't know much, and so you have someone that's kind of with you and trains you a little bit. He answers the phone one time, and if any of the people listening to this podcast know much about our church, they know that there's opposition against it. And to me, that is actually a testimony of the work that there are those out there who are fighting against it, actively fighting against it, and for whatever reason, but I believe a lot of it is driven by Lucifer. He wants to stop the work. And so we get a phone call, and these people said they had some questions that they wanted to ask us. And so I was all excited. I thought, somebody wants to learn about the gospel, and my more experienced trainer companion said, yeah, we'll see. It doesn't sound like they wanted to really learn. They were people who were fighting against, or sometimes called anti, or those against the church, and that seemed to be their desire when we got there. They had a lot of information and books and things that they tried to shake us, or tried to make us doubt what we were doing. And we talked with them for a couple of hours and excused ourselves, and
it's a long time to get to give to them.
It was a long time, yeah. And we answered their questions, and I was really impressed with my older senior companion and the way he was able to handle and defend our beliefs, with his life's experience, and even in the scriptures, which I fully believe in the church and its teachings, and that it can be defended in the scriptures. Although I don't know that that's always the best answer, because I believe that the Spirit is what actually converts people. But through the scriptures and through those things, it can be defended. And we came back to our apartment, and I remember it was in Oklahoma, a little town called Bethany. And we came back to our little apartment, and I sat down on the bed, and I opened up a copy of the Book of Mormon that I'd been studying and reading, and I remember that as I opened it up and read in those pages, and I don't even remember where it was, but it completely annihilated all of their things they had tried to throw at us. The feeling that came over me, and the testimony that hit me at that time, and the spirit that I felt as I read those pages and in that book, it wiped away all or any doubt that they may have tried to plant in my mind. And I felt that many, many times since then, as I read and study and go forward from that. And that was one of my, early on in my mission, I was called for an 18-month mission, and I'd been out about 12 months when the church decided to make it 2 years again, and so I was able to extend an extra 6 months and stay out for almost exactly the full 2 years. I was just a few days short because of how I guess scheduling and flights and different things. I don't know what all was entailed there, but so that was really a pivotal moment in my mission because I was young and inexperienced and things. I was still gaining my own belief, my own testimony, if you will, of the gospel, and that really cemented my belief and has helped guide me through life, through learning and growing and making mistakes, like we all do, but still helping me to have some focus and direction in life and not just kind of wandering whichever way and being tossed around by all of the philosophies of men in the world. I do my best to follow Jesus and Heavenly Father and their living prophets who are on this earth.
So, when you had that experience, it really grew your testimony a lot to go from all these negative things they're trying to say about the church and about the history of the restored gospel and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, everything. Because, if you look at our history, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly in our history of the church. And so a lot of times anti will pinpoint, oh, look, people made these mistakes here, these mistakes there, right. Imperfect people. And some of those mistakes are pretty gnarly in some cases. They're pretty crazy. So there's the good and the bad and the ugly. But then the spirit that you feel when you read the Book of Mormon, a lot of the anti-stuff is just completely false or twisted, right? But even anything that is, a little bit harder to grapple with in the history of the church, the spirit that you felt from the Book of Mormon testified of its truthfulness. And that is stronger than any of those. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes.
That would be...
Yes, that would be kind of wrap it up. And I continue to feel that when I study. I try to study every day in the scriptures, not just the Book of Mormon, but in all of the scriptures that we consider, revealed Word of God. One of the things I like to think about, and I had thought about this on my mission, people would get after us sometimes and say, well, why do you have the Book of Mormon, and why do you have the Doctrine and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price and these other scriptures that we consider to be scriptures? And I always think about when Jesus was tempted of the devil and he had been fasting and takes him, I think it says it takes him up on an exceeding high mountain. And,
yeah, it does. Yeah.
And Jesus had been fasting for 40 days and Lucifer tries to tempt him with, some bread or something, I think, and Jesus just tells him that we shall not live by bread alone, but by every word which proceeds forth out of the mouth of God. And when I think of all these other scriptures which we believe have proceeded forth out of the mouth of God, then we should live by those things which come from the mouth of God. Not just the Bible. And I love the Bible, the Old and New Testament. I love the things that I learn there, and I just study that, and I feel the spirit of the truthfulness that's in there also. But I also believe that God is not silent, and He's not only talked to those people who wrote the Bible and recorded the Bible, but He talked with other peoples, and they recorded that, and we have a record of that, and that's part of what the Book of Mormon is. It's a history and a record of a different group of people in a different nation, a different country. So,
and when I read it, the way that you read it is, it's one of those things where if you've studied historical things, like if you read about war, for example, war journals are very detailed. There's interesting details about little things, a friend dying here because of that, or whatever. War journals are detailed. And when I read the Book of Mormon, it's a lot less of like a story. I mean, there's a story element to it because it's a true thing that happened, but you read it and it's like historical. It's like documentation. It's like record keeping. And there's a difference between if you read something that's a story versus it's something that's an actual record. And when I read the Book of Mormon, I see it as a record of truth, a historical record. And that's what, it's impossible for me to see that in any other way than that. And it testifies through the Spirit, but you can also clearly see that it's a historical record if you have the eyes to see that, you know?
Yeah.
That's been my experience. I just felt I wanted to share that.
Yeah, and that's all good. One of the things that's been really fun is I've been studying lately and learning more also about different things. You know, sometimes people get hung up on, I don't know why it's so easy for a lot of people to accept the Bible as being scripture, but the Book of Mormon can't be. You know, they have a hard time accepting that. And they want evidence, you know, physical evidence. And more also the physical evidences are coming out. You know, just the way the wording is and all of that in that as people who know way more about languages and things study it.
Forensic analysts, people that are forensically qualified too have studied it.
Yeah, and there's just more and more evidences that also back it up, you know. And for years we had to take a lot of things on faith, and I think we still should, with the Spirit confirming truthfulness from God. You know, I don't put my trust in man. I put my trust in God to help direct me and guide me, even though I believe in a living prophet here on the earth, and I believe in following those things. I believe he is directed by God to help direct his church here upon this earth. But it's been so neat to learn all of those evidences and things that back the spiritual stuff that I felt for years. And there's a ton of evidences coming out, even more and more all the time. And that's been fun to learn and see. So.
Yep, it is super cool. And like what you said, we should still take it on faith. We should use the Spirit to guide us. But that doesn't mean we have to deny something that's evidential. Right? Everything in the Book of Mormon, it says all things testify that there's a God. Mm-hmm. All things denote is the word that it uses, there's a God. And so any evidence of historical proof of the Book of Mormon, you know, I think we should accept that. But also it says in the Book of Mormon, it says, there's a part in there where it's talking about faith, and it says, if you know these things, is it faith? It's not faith if you know it. And so it talks about how faith is a requirement of the gospel, because we can't have a perfect knowledge in this life of these things. And so it does take faith, even with the evidence, to know and to believe, even if you've had spiritual confirmations. Mm-hmm. God still wants us to have faith, to exercise faith. And I think that's really beautiful and powerful, because if you just know something, it's not faith, right? You know it if you know it. And so, I think God encourages us to have faith.
Another thing I think about a lot of the times, too, is, you know, I talked about that experience early on in my mission where I had this profound spiritual experience confirming the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon and what I was doing, the direction I was on and the path I was leading. But if I just leave it at that and don't continue to study, you know, you watch us as people in anything. If we give up on something, you know, years ago, my wife Lindy wanted to run a half marathon, and I said, "Hey, I'll do it with you." just for the fun. So we trained and we ran this half marathon. And for that, I trained, I think, 3.5 months to run this half marathon, I think it's 13.1 miles as a half. And so I trained for those 3.5 months to run this race. And I conditioned my body well enough that I could do that. I didn't plan on winning it. I just wanted to finish it. But after that, I quit running. And so now, if I were to try to run 13.1 miles, I couldn't do it. So, our spiritual minds and bodies our spiritual minds are just like our physical bodies in a way. If we don't continually nourish them and strengthen them, they become weaker too. And so it can be as simple as just some basic studies every day and immersing yourself in the scriptures and in the words of God that He has given us to help us to continually strengthen those things in our life, because Satan's out there and he wants us to be miserable. He does not want us to be happy. He wants us to be like him and miserable. And God wants us to be happy. He wants us to have an abundant, joyful, hope-filled life. We still can have bad days. We still have things that don't go right. People can still get cancer. People can still get sick and die or whatever. There can be things that are very hard. But if you have a belief in God and a belief in His gospel and in His plan, it gives you hope and joy and peace in this life, and hope in the future.
That it does, doesn't it? And that experience of even what you experienced with your mission story, of them having things to say about the church which are kind of negative, and then you experiencing the Spirit after, that's kind of you going from darkness into light, right? Mm-hmm. Where you have people opposition, darkness, and then having that spiritual experience into light. And I can testify that that's what the gospel of Jesus Christ does mm-hmm. with our entire lives. And the more that we follow Him, Jesus Christ, who is the author of all of the covenants and all of our salvation, the more that we experience that of opposition to joy, and we get refined, and we become a better person through the gospel. And so it's a lifelong
thing. It's a beautiful thing, but it's a lifelong process. It's not a one-time event. It's a lifetime of progressing and trying to do better and repenting and apologizing and because we all have days where we might mess up or do something we're like, man, why did I do that? And everybody does it, and the beauty of it is we can start fresh. We can start fresh. We can understand more and apply that atonement, the work of the atonement that Jesus did in our lives can help us start fresh again. And I think it's just an amazing thing to be able to have that guilt swept away and have more peace in our lives.
Yep, it really is. So, well, thanks for coming on, Dad. I'm glad that we were able to do this little podcast today. I sure love hearing your stories, your mission stories, and hearing the story of building the house and everything. So I appreciate you coming on, Dad.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
So, yeah, you guys, definitely hope you enjoyed this podcast and learned something and maybe got some spiritual insights today. I love it when we get to talk about the spiritual stuff on this podcast, which is really what it's mainly about. So we talk about a little bit of other stuff on here, but mainly the spiritual stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in future episodes. As always, peace be unto you.